Just 8 days out from the $3 million Pegasus World Cup Dirt, $4 million in purses that day with our two marquee races. Somebody out there getting a little exercise running on the turf course. Jason Blewett and Acacia Courtney are with you on a sunny Friday afternoon, start of the weekend. I'm wondering, Acacia, if that might be Paco Lopez. I know Paco's a big fan of running the turf course here and trying to burn some calories before riding a full day. And a full day, indeed, is what's on tap. 10 races altogether. As Jay Pridman of the Racing Forum would often say with Del Mar, shame about the weather here in Hallandale Beach.
It is beautiful and not hot by any stretch. Has been a little bit of, by Florida standards, a cool front. But the sun is out. It's really a lovely day. And like we always say, a great day for thoroughbred racing. So happy to have Mother Nature on our side. We're back on the turf for all of the races today.
And how are you feeling today, by the way?
Not good. It's Beat the Expert. It's always extra pressure on us, but it's a lot of fun. It's free to play. You can try to pick more winners than me, which lately has not been a hard thing to do, is trying to get some of those prices home. Maybe not the best idea on some of these cards, but we'll see what happens today. Head on over to the Gulfstream Park website. It's free to play. Enter in your picks for the 10 races today, and hopefully I get lucky.
I hope that's the case. Absolutely. I'm always in your corner. You know that. And I'm hoping also a bit later in the broadcast when you give out your Friday Rainbow Six ticket, I'm hoping that hits as well, and for good reason. A $400,000 guarantee here on this January the 15th as we get things underway and shortly under 60 minutes on a fast and good Friday afternoon. And with that comes our opening pick 5, and you'll step up. I mean, the pressure's on you. Beat the Expert, the Rainbow Six ticket, and we're going for $32 in this early pick 5. And we do not make things easy, Acacia, on anybody off the bat. A very difficult first race, a big field with very little form on paper.
I think I could have gone about 8 deep in this first leg, and in several of the races, in fact, in this sequence. I thought it was a very tough pick 5 sequence. Try Me, currently the favorite off a second last out and picking up by Irad Ortiz. I'll also take Sadio on the drop in class. Too deep in a very interesting maiden 50 on the turf in race number 2. I've got 2 horses in there. I wanted to spread in race number 3. I really don't trust Bacchanalia off what I thought was a pretty disappointing effort, but seemed a bit fresh off of an extended layoff last time. And we'll talk more about that race later, but did not want to leave her off of the ticket either. Too deep in race number 4 with One-Eyed Jack and Tis Light the Way, who I think both will appreciate getting back to the main. And then we cap things in the sequence with a maiden 35 on the turf, and I'm just too deep in there. This is another race where I could have used a few more, but I like Bertrada getting back to the grass.
Fair enough. I do like that third race, though. It's a good little race on the turf. And, in terms of going through, I'd say, the overall schematics of this first race, which, by the way, we're on the main track for the Friday opener at 12:35 Eastern, which is a 12-5, again, 3-year-old maiden claimer at 6 furlongs. The 10 horse, I have no issue with the 10 Try Me in this spot, who's obviously very early in the wagering, a 2-1 favorite. Probably a combination and a fairly obvious combination of way improved effort second out, and then you slot in Irad Ortiz Jr.
Absolutely. Made a big difference from the first race to the second race. It was a wet, fast track last time at Gulfstream Park West, but I think just having some more experience that day and was able to sustain the speed a little bit better. So those were things that I liked about that last race for this colt by personal interest, and obviously picking up Irad Ortiz, he's going to be taking a lot of money in here. I did, like you, look for an alternative, though, and I laid it on Sadio, who has been gelded, comes back with a drop in class, and as I've kind of been saying, some of those maiden claiming races at Gulfstream Park West, I think you almost need a drop in class coming into the championship meet, as the waters do appear to be a bit deeper. But it turns out it was a pretty live race that he comes out of. Think about it, got a 66 Beyer speed figure the next time out.
Well, I like hearing that for sure. My MO with this race is to take kind of a weird-looking horse and a horse that's opened up, again, quite a bit of time before they spring the latch. But I have 2 words here, Jesus Lander, and he's taking over the training of the one Chucky. This has been a barn that all of a sudden was winning at a very high percentage throughout 2020 and clearly brought along Avant-Garde from a low-level claimer into a claiming Crown Stakes winner. I mean, he's moved up a number of horses he's either claimed or trainer taking the training over through a trainer switch, and that's good enough for me in a spot like this to take the one Chucky up there at 7-2. Any thoughts there?
No, I was just going to say, it's amazing how much money he's taking early on. I think the public has caught on to the Jesus Lander angle as well.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Now, as we get on to the second here, we're on the turf. We'll go a mile and a 16, $50,000 to $40,000 maiden claimer. You know, it's funny, Acacia, this is, or at least the early portion of this card, you don't have stakes races or even a couple of high-level allowance races per se, but we do run across trainer Todd Pletcher in a little bit of probably a combination of a bit of a sell-off and just trying to find the right levels for horses like the number one, who's going to be favored here, who I picked in Gimme Some Mo, and a bit later on, he's got One-Eyed Jack, who's going to be favored in the fourth race as that horse descends down to 12-5 claiming. Layoff aside, I'd like to just take the position that Gimme Some Mo for $50K for Todd here at Gulfstream should be pretty tough.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to improve. I think that he's probably the one to beat just given the connections. But the three races that he's run recently, two of them here at Gulfstream in the spring, one on the dirt, one on the turf, they just kind of have a little bit of a sameness to them in that he runs well, but not enough for you to really say, okay, this is a horse that I want moving forward. It's been another layoff now since September at Belmont. He faced an okay field up there for 75, comes back in now for the 50. Again, I think he's the one to beat, but I do think he has his own questions. I was intrigued by a firster in the number 8, Oran, who's by Lemon Drop Kid. Plenty of turf pedigree on this one for the debut. And what I thought was fascinating is that Eddie Keneally, with first-time starters on the turf and maiden claiming, is 6 for 14 over the past 5 years for 43% and 71% of the time in the money. Very, very good move for this barn, which I hadn't realized. I was intrigued by the pedigree at the start. And again, I don't love a six-figure horse that debuts for 50. It's taken him a little bit of time to get to the racetrack. And maybe he's just one that, being a fresh face in here, doesn't have some of the questions of some of the others, like the one, Gimme Some Mo, and like the Angry Man, who've already had a lot of starts.
And has had, I mean, a lot of just overall sameness. There's a real sameness with the turf races. They haven't been poor. They haven't been outstanding. They've just been kind of cookie cutter, stamping them out where he's got dead aim and he's out finished. Does he meet the right field, even though he may have a couple of new shooters to contend with? We'll see for trainer Dermot Magner. Let's move on to the third race here. We're on the turf at a mile and a 16th. Now, this is a higher level allowance race where layoff horses, for the most part, or at least one layoff horse, I think deserves top billing on the marquee, and that is the Chad Brown trained Bacchanalia, who, as we talk about this mare by a former Belmont winner in Union Rags, I mean, you're talking about a horse who seemed, despite some starts and fits, she seemed to hit her stride here. The only time, in fact, Acacia, last winter, where she was able to run successive races without a layoff, and really ran well, not only with that win over Cap de Cruz, but coming back and got no pace in the Silver Kitten race. You know, watching that race at Belmont, you had noted in your early pick 5, she had the appearance of a horse who was very keen and very fresh, and if she had any real chance off that layoff, it probably evaporated with that early run down the backstretch.
Yeah, it was a strange kind of race from her, and sometimes it is the case, especially with fillies or mares, that if they're off of a layoff, they can just be a little bit keen, a little bit hard to handle off the bench, and that seemed to be my takeaway from that race. Is she was outfooted out of the gate, parked a little bit wide, so Jose Ortiz opting to kind of drop in and save some ground at the back of the pack, and then she kind of got really rank and headstrong and forced him to make that kind of middle run to the front, where then she tired, as was to be expected. So I'm not sure what we're going to get from her today. It's another little bit of a layoff since October, but she does come back relatively quickly after that poor performance. I just thought Ask Bailey and maybe a couple of others had a little bit of class to them, as well, as this filly comes out of the Tropical Park Oaks behind Vigilante's Way, and she's just one that tends to come from pretty far off of it and sometimes makes things difficult for herself. But she was one that I was intrigued by coming back here for Mike Maker. And
perhaps a comparable, maybe not as extreme, but Choate Bridge, who I wound up going with, and we'll roll her Gulfstream Park return here. In fact, this was opening Sunday, in fact, the day after the claiming crown on December 6th. She can pack a pretty big wallop. This is a better field. She is undoubtedly stepping up. It not only is obvious with the level, but just looking at Senseless Drama, who was second, and Pardon My Heart. They're solid. They might not be at the same level as this field today. But I would like to take the optimistic side of the coin here and Spectrum Acacia with a horse who once upon a time showed some talent, was off for well over a year, and is only running for the 4th time since mid-June of 2019 for a very good trainer. I'd like to also think that Brendan Walsh has got her in a good groove, and we might see just a filly who's still coming into her own.
Yeah, she got a very good trip last time, and as we've been talking about, Corey Lannery's been riding the turf very well here. She does get John Velasquez up today. She is the half-sister to Proctor's Ledge, so I'm sure that this is the mare coming back off that big layoff. You want to get her in good form, try to get some black type on her pedigree and put her into stakes company after this. So this would be, I think, a good telltale race to see where she really does belong. Also wanted to give just a quick mention to No Way Jose, who was a mare that I had really liked back in the spring here. She got the win going the distance of ground, the mare by No Nay Never, who's now with Eddie Keneally, who could have a pretty strong day for himself coming up here.
You hope so.
Yeah, it would make Beat the Expert a little bit more fun for me. But she's coming back off a layoff, and she's one that had done some pretty good running here back early in 2020.
Well, let's run right into race 4. In the meantime, 1 mile on the main, 2 lifetime 12.5 to 10K claiming race. Very much about, of course, the basically the fire sale of the 12.5 variety here for the number 1, One-Eyed Jack, who's had some starts and fits and some convalescing and just has not run well since barely breaking his maiden at a $2.40 mutual last February up in Maryland for Todd Pletcher. Where do you stand with him going into this? I mean, clearly, like I feel, this could be a horse who's a little bit vulnerable in this spot just because his recent form has been so blasé.
He's a tough horse to really trust, especially because, like you said, he was just able to hold on to break his maiden at Laurel after trying up in New York to no avail. And it seems like the turf was almost kind of a last-ditch type of effort. Okay, he's got a little bit of turf pedigree. Let's see if he improves here. And the answer was no. So he goes back to the main track and he plummets all the way down. It's kind of a for sale sign out. But as we've often seen, Todd Pletcher does tend to win with horses like these that are taking that big drop in class. You know, maybe it's a let's move them on from our program, but they might get a victory while they're at it. So I, like you, felt that he was a little bit vulnerable but could win. 'Tis Light the Way. Prefer him on the dirt, and he gets back to the main track today.
All right, so you're towards the middle of the pack, as am I. You'll take the Mike Tomlinson off the claim horse in the 4, 'Tis Light the Way. I got no issue, really, with his dirt races, and maybe if you're under the impression you don't fully trust One-Eyed Jack and some of these other horses may have an issue for whatever the reason staying a mile, like in terms of just overall staying power, I didn't have that issue with him on paper.
No, that's true. I mean, he broke his maiden 'Tis Light the Way going 1 mile and an eighth at Churchill 2 starts back. And I just think that the 12.5 is kind of a logical level for him versus where he's been running. It's not a significant drop in class like One-Eyed Jack.
Now, the speed of the 5 Nimble Beast turned me on. The fact that he got a mile 2 starts back, made in 10, and I get it. It was over at the other place at GPW, and he was 8 to 5. But still, handled the distance. He's got speed, and just, I mean, he was cooked last time out. They were rolling in that race. I mean, a blistering, like, inferno of a pace at 7 furlongs, and I don't think a horse at or near the level he was running at would have been able to hang in there, and he didn't tire that badly. I'll take him trying a mile, and all of a sudden, it's like, wow, Kelly Breen is very good off the claim.
His barn has been really rolling lately, and this one off the claim for Mike Dubb, and very good numbers for him claiming horses on the dirt, and I do like that it's a little bit of a step up in class, too, off that last effort.
And you would like the winner, It's a Risk, who paid, I think, around $30 or $35 in that race,
that day.
who was trained for Kelly Breen,
Yeah.
That's right, and Montanet won for that barn as a new acquisition yesterday. We've got 44 on the clock. We'll take a little breather here. We'll chase the rainbow, 400K after this.
in the two-path. Ground on first inside. Race. A quarter of a mile to go, and he's 6 yards out. It's last of the 12 as they roll into the backstretch.
Ready to roll, a 10-race Friday here. Again, just a week and change out from the 5th running of the Pegasus World Cup at Gulfstream Park, and that shot high above the finish line. Few stories up in the air, not all that far from track announcer Pete Aiello, who will call the action of all 10 races today with 42 minutes out on a fast and good Friday. It's Acacia, it's Jason, and we're glad you're with us for act number 2, and we'll certainly a bit later in the day, Acacia, will take the show on the road. A number of stops by coastal sequence in today's Stronach 5.
Very happy to see our sister track Golden Gate Fields back running today, and they will be the anchor of the sequence, so to speak, the final leg. Things kick off in Maryland with race 8 at Laurel. There's 2 from Maryland. Our race 8 here at Gulfstream, the 3rd from the Great Race Place out at Santa Anita, and then the 3rd from Golden Gate, and that low 12% takeout.
Absolutely. Take out 20% in the meantime for the Rainbow Six. As we say, it's a low-risk, high-reward type wager with a very slim barrier to entry. 20-cent denomination will get you in the door and get you a ticket here. And in fact, Acacia's got combinations worth $43.20. No singles for you here throughout the 6-race sequence.
No, like the early pick 5, I thought it was a pretty tough way to go through today's card. Pretty competitive races as opposed to the 2 horses I used in the cash out of the pick 5. I'm 3 deep, wanting to include Very Savvy, who gets back on the turf in race number 5. The quality continues with the older maidens coming up in race number 6. I'm 3 deep there as we'll see what we get from Brazilianaire, a second time out for trainer Chad Brown. 2 deep with Fitress and Subsidiary. I thought that I just couldn't leave off Subsidiary, who's off the claim for Bobby DeBona. I've got 2 horses in the 8th as well, which I think is a very tough and competitive race. I could have used a lot more in there. That's the one I'm most nervous about. 2 deep in the 9th, and then we wrap things up with a fun maiden special weight on turf. I've got 3 horses there.
Yeah, it's a nice cash out without a doubt. That is a quality Friday capper without a doubt as we bring on these 3-year-old fillies in leg number 1 of today's Rainbow. The tag's 35 to 30,000. We're on the turf going a mile. I know we are. A lot of talking. Yeah, take your time, get a sip of water, and
we're good.
Yeah, good. As we we intro the race and set the race up. I see you and I are on different horses, but mid-pack towards the outside. I wound up taking the Safi trainer change in this race, who's a new face in from Woodbine in the number 10, Very Safi, who's a filly by commissioner, who's got some speed. I like First Safi with a horse who's handled synth and turf pretty well to this point, and I'll take her over your top pick, or at least right outside your top pick in Bertrada, who's a violence filly. I got to hear, what do you like about her getting back on the turf for the second time? Because her one turf race in Saratoga, gazillion to 1 and didn't lift a hoof.
No, it was a pretty bad performance in that debut, but I do think it was a pretty nice race that she comes out of. Love Struck, of course, did go on to win the Tep-In for trainer Bill Mott, and she, to me, looking back at the race once again, she kind of hopped at the start and then just seemed really confused as to what she was supposed to do after that, losing contact with the field. Her 2 dirt races, to be fair, were much better, but they were also for a lower class level, so I think it's a drop in class, especially given just the turf form. And she does have some turf pedigree. She had struck me as a horse that was on the right surface in her debut. So I'm just going to take a little bit of a shot with her in here. I do think that Bryn Bella, again, another little drop in class, probably one of the horses to beat. Unfortunately, I think that the 3 strongest horses that I prefer in here do have to deal with some outside posts, and that includes Very Savvy, who I actually thought that one turf race up at Woodbine, she ran pretty well that day.
Yeah, no, I did too. And then, again, hopefully she's improved a little bit since then, because it was only her second start, and she's got a top trainer in her corner. Speaking of a top trainer, you've also got trainer Chad Brown for Claravich Stables with the 7 Conventional Wisdom, one of a couple in here by Flintshear. In fact, both Todd Pletcher and Chad sending out the 2 Flintshear fillies. Maiden 35, I wasn't sure really how to proceed with her, even though it is Chad after all.
Absolutely, it is. And, you know, it's funny because she has such a a long work tab, too. I mean, it goes all the way back to the start of October where she was training at Monmouth, then she was at Belmont, now she's been here in Florida. Maybe it's been a little bit tough getting her to the races, and I think that might have been the biggest question, and that might be why we do see her debuting for the 35. So I kind of left her a little bit further down the end as far as it does go, but obviously there's plenty of turf pedigree there.
There is, and this is a day as we continue on in the late pick 5. In fact, will commence in Friday 6, which is an older maiden special weight on the main. You've got, again, a situation. This could be a day. I mean, Todd Pletcher could have a gigantic afternoon here, a week out or so from the Pegasus, sending out one short price contender after another. He's got not only my single in the 6 Nocturnal, who I think, long layoff aside, is going to be a pretty big favorite here. He's also got the pricey and I guess late starting 4-year-old firster by Candy Ride in the 1 Bold Agenda down on the rail, who I did trim off as far as just preferring the single Nocturnal, and I'll get that over with early on. Again, I've got coverage the remainder of the way, that good cash out race 2, 3, and 7 in the Friday back end. And let's get down to business here, Acacia. I mean, I'd say going in, although you've got one from Chad Brown and Brazilianaire who cost a lot, and then the other pricey Candy Ride, the firster Bold Agenda, a large chunk of this race, and even Shug's horse, Arifachet, is coming back, who ran pretty well here last winter. You know, the main plot line of this race is Nocturnal, who's another late starting 4-year-old. We saw him once. This was the day after the Florida Derby, in fact. This was closing day as we backtrack to his start and only race to this point. This was closing day of last year's championship meet, and he ran great. Race came up fast. The only problem for him was he was running against a talented stablemate of his in Dr. Post, who we have not seen, by the way, since he fizzled at 3-5 in the Jim Dandy.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a question. My theory with Dr. Post, and I think, unfortunately, a couple from the 3-year-old crop do seem to fit in that, is that he was one of those very precocious, very good early 3-year-olds that maybe everybody else kind of caught up and surpassed him, as he did run very, very well in the Belmont Stakes behind Tis the Law. So obviously at the time, Nocturnal behind his more I guess, highly touted stablemate, Dr. Post, who would go on to do some good things. We haven't seen Nocturnal since then either, but obviously Todd's so good off of the layoff, and it wasn't that I didn't like him in this spot, is that I just kind of preferred a couple of others. I'm giving Brazilianaire one more chance, who really disappointed as the favorite at Churchill in that off-the-turf race. There's a big pedigree on this one for Peter Brandt and Bob LaPenta as the blinkers go on. Out of a grade 2 place mare, Flash Forward, who's the sister to Glinda the Good, who's the dam of good magic. So big family there as far as Chad having an interest in it too. I'm going to give him one more try, as he struck me as the type that needed to kind of get his feet underneath of him.
And if that's the case, I mean, clearly he has worked right along up north of us in Boynton Beach at Palm Meadows and a big-time breeze to get him tuned up and ready for this race. I'm curious to see how Brazilianaire runs, and then you've got the other Candy Ride in the race. I mean, both of them combined cost more than $1.5 million, which is pretty outrageous. That is the 4-year-old firster, mind you, of the number 1 Bold Agenda. Again, you know, I'm going into this thinking his stablemate might be a little more forwardly advanced, even though he hasn't run all that often. We haven't seen him since last late March. But, I mean, what are you looking for with Bold Agenda today?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. The dam's been a good producer so far, as 4 of her foals were winners, one of them including a mail order who just won trying the turf for the first time for Bill Mott the other day. She looked like a colt. She was a big, substantial, solid filly. So obviously I haven't seen Bold Agenda, but if that trait carries in the family, it could be an explanation as to why he's a later starting, later developing type, because sometimes of those size, it just takes them a while to really get into fitness, to get their feet underneath of them, to have kind of their body and everything else catch up to their size and to their legs. So I'm curious to see what he looks like this afternoon.
Let's get on to the 7th here. We still have a bunch of races to get to and the lightning round, so we'll flip back on the turf. We'll go go 5 furlongs, 16K claimer. I like the spot trainer Steve Cosaris is in this race. He's got 2 chances here with the 1 Bright Venezuelan and the 7 Got Glee, and I think both horses are just well spotted and well meant today for 16K. You've also got, of course, the big speed and a last out victory, which will show you smack dab 7 days before Christmas Day with the number 2 Fightress, who was very game, and I got to admit, in being fully candid, which I always try to be, I did not like her a whole heck of a lot in this race, but she tracked outside and dug in gamely, beating a pretty sharp horse for the level in Tony's Rose, who's starting to clunk up there and close for 3rd on the outside. You know, good recent form, and that early speed just makes her a major obvious player coming back.
Yeah, and I don't think that she will be any sort of price today, though. I think with Irad Ortiz climbing aboard, she'll probably take quite a bit of attention. I did like Bright Venezuelan, too. I thought that was a major player. Did land, though, on the number 6 Subsidiary, who ran poorly last time, and it was almost a too bad to be true type of race, because this had been a very consistent mare overall. She's first off the claim for Bobby DeBona, and Luis Saez takes the call. Thought she could sit a nice trip just stalking the pace, too.
One of a couple new claims in the race, along with the 5 Aficionado. I thought obviously would run pretty well there for J.C. Avila. Interesting 7th race on the turf. Back on the main fairly late in the day with this 2 lifetime older filly mare claimer. My horse, my top pick scratched out, the 3 Beautiful Rosie in this spot.
Too.
Oh, you liked her as well? Yeah, I thought she'd actually run well.
Me too.
I was bummed to see she was scratched. And you and I, well, we're boxing up the super here, 5, 7, 10, 11, a little bit of that combination. I'll wind up taking and scratching into the 5 Leo's Diamond in off just a disastrous race last time out. But, you know, not only is she down to 62.50, there's no layoff here for Tony Margata Jr. And to me, that might be the best thing about her coming back today.
And she could get a nice trip, too. There should be, I think, a fair amount of pace in here. I don't love that Flying Sophia's now the top pick, but she has run okay on some of her dirt races. She's also taking a drop, and you've got a Misael Jaramillo in the saddle. She was the one that I scratched into, but I think that this race is very difficult in that there's not really a lot of solid dirt form to go off of.
You got that right. Let's move on to the 9th there. A little more turf form to go on, maybe inconsistency in the short careers of these 3-year-old restricted 25K optional claiming runners on the turf at 1 mile and a 16th has been the biggest issue. I mean, case in point, my horse, the 3 Mr. Leonardo, was bad 3 back, came back to win, beat Go Mike, who's in the race for Antonio Sano today, and then was just, I mean, they shot for the moon last time out, and it just didn't work out against a field miles better than this one. And that's what I find most appealing about Mr. Leonardo. But I'm happy you took the 2 Long Beach Kid, because I'll tell you, Acacia, after the scratch of the 4 Cowardly Act, I think the biggest, most important pre-race nugget is, if I was to line up what I felt, again, in dissecting the race, I think it's the pace and how it's altered with no Cowardly Act.
I'm hoping he can wire the field in here. And I know that the last race, where it was his first start on turf, did come up very slow as far as the buyer speed figure is concerned. Just got a 45, and I know he wired the field to win that off the turf race in his debut. But visually, thought that he really seemed to take to the turf quite well. He has the most amount of speed. Tyler Gaffleone, Kathleen O'Connell's been having a good meet. I'm just hoping that they take them from gate to wire, and maybe some others who are stepping up or coming off of a poor race have a few questions that need to be answered today.
All right, fair enough. Now, there is a key question concerning our Friday nightcap as we hit the big 1-0 in race number 10 with this group of older filly and mare maiden special weight runners, because in a race that looks pretty deep, that's got some meat to it and depth to it on paper, clearly there's a horse in the 7, Coalition Building, who I picked on top and you took in the 2nd spot, who has not run since a week before Halloween in 2019. Now, she was beaten by a good horse that day in a very live race, splitting both Antoinette and Lost Ticket that afternoon at Belmont late in the fall meet again back in 2019. She returns for Chad Brown. He's got Chad, not surprisingly, off year-plus layoffs. He's about 30% at 23 for 79. Here's a stat, and I'm curious to see what Ronnie pulled here. So this is 6 months with maiden special weight turf runners. So again, a comparable sort of strike rate. I mean, this is a barn when you consider Chad's lineage with Bobby Frankel. Very good layout barn. So that, I guess that assuaged some fears I had that she might need a race, and I'll take her on top over the 5, or at least you've got the 5. Spongy in the mix, who's a pricey filly, one of a couple of firsters in the mix this afternoon, going out for trainer Bill Mott.
Yeah, besides having a fun name to say, she sold for a lot at the New York bred sale, and she comes in open company on the turf. Second family, very, very strong for this one. And the dam, her only win was on the grass, too, and she was trained by Christophe Clemontis. She's been training this filly up at Payson. The dam was a good producer already, too. Ambivalent was grade 3 placed. Just kind of wanted a firster in here, and I liked the pedigree on this one. Take Charge Row, though, obviously she, as far as the recency does go, she has the best last out effort. And honestly, the last 3 races have been very strong.
They have been. And it's not a huge nitpick or gripe with her, and it's not her fault, really. I'm not a huge fan of this Black Magic Woman race that she's coming out of. I just, again, with the firsters in the mix, the Chad layoff horse, the Clement layoff horse, and the 12 Ocean Air, I think there's a high probability this is just not only a deeper field in terms of just metrics. It's just a better field of maidens. So that's not to say she can't win. She's a major player. I just preferred horses not coming out of that race. And real fast, I mean, what are you looking at? Because the 12 Ocean Air really ran well against Bajan Girls, turned out to be a pretty good horse for Rohan Crichton, yet we have not seen her since early March, and she now goes from stall number 11.
Yeah, she has it up against her at the beginning, given the post that she has. But at that time, that was a very strong maiden race that she did participate in. Some interesting horses to the inside that I didn't use, but Star Command, I mean, I kept looking at her, too, for Shug McGahee. She seems like she's kind of one of these later developing. We see them so often. Shug McGahee types.
Definitely, and that was my MO, having her so highly rated. It just strikes me it's like that. She's kind of chugging along slowly but surely, typical for Shug, and then you factor in the Orb puzzling pedigree, and I'm hoping she's sitting on a career best effort. She'll probably need it. It's a good field to close down the card as we take a few moments before closing down the show today with our Friday, January the 15th lightning round. And again, a very Pegasus-heavy first few items, and that off the bat concerns, Coastal Defense drawing into the Pegasus dirt field. As you know, trainer Dale Rowans is not afraid, Acacia, to swing for the fences.
No, he's not. As this big son of Curlin, he knows the family well. They have 2 free drop billies. Also, they have an international turf star in Hawkbill. He's well bred. He's finally a horse that's gotten a chance to go the 2 turns, finishing 4th in the Clark, and King Guillermo saying he's out of the race. Will go to California the week after. So Coastal Defense draws in, and I know that this is something that Dale has been keen to participate in. He'll now have 2 with Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, Mr. Freeze, who was second behind Mucho Gusto and last year's Pegasus World Cup dirt. Shug McGahee, in the meantime, holds a pretty strong hand, or at least has 2 fighting chances in the Pegasus turf. He's also got Code of Honor in the dirt race, who's going to be maybe second choice or co-second choice with Tax behind Nick's Go in that spot. And Shug, I think, sitting pretty with Breaking the Rules and, of course, North Dakota. And, the thing I like about Breaking the Rules, it's not just the Phipps background and that pedigree and all that. I think he is getting back to where he once was, which looked like he could be a top turf horse in the making.
He had a year layoff almost to the day, came back and won the last race of the day on the Belmont Stakes card. It was the race after the Belmont, and he's had a pretty good year since then. Really, I think, turned a corner with that big race in the Tropical Park Derby 2 back.
Definitely.
Or last time out, excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Now, the Payson Park work tab yesterday was like a literal who's who in terms of Hall of Famer Bill Mott, with both Channelmaker and Tacitus recording works up there. Now, Channelmaker has just hit so hard and has really just been one of those horses that has had so much longevity. throughout the older turf male division. Here he is, in fact, late last year at Belmont in the autumn meet, winning the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic.
Runs with that head way up in the air. That's always how he's done it. And Manny Franco has picked up the ride in the last few, and he had suited him quite well. And he ran a very big race in the Breeders' Cup, too. I think a big contender for older male turf horse in the Eclipse Awards.
Yeah, I was talking to Mike Welsh this morning, and Mike got the vibe that he might be favored to win that category
so.
for sure. And I'm wondering, I guess maybe he just needed a break channel maker, because he would fit pretty snugly with who's pointing to the Pegasus turf, but a neat old campaigner, and good luck to him in the Eclipse Award voting. More on that in a couple of seconds. Saturday is a very nice little launching pad to what awaits in the wings here in 8 days with the 5th Pegasus World Cup card, because we're going to see Acacia tomorrow afternoon, the best of the best when it concerns the Florida breds.
And now the Sunshine Stakes. It's on Saturday here. We'll have 4 Florida bred stakes, looking to see a couple try to defend their title, an Extravagant Kid in the sprint and Noble Drama in the Classic.
Definitely. And then the Eclipse Award finalists, speaking of Saturday's action with that 12-race card locally in an early post tomorrow of 11:45 a.m., TVG is going to be announcing the 2020 Eclipse finalists, and I would imagine as we check out in the background, Authentic winning the BC Classic, I mean, he's clearly a pretty big favorite to nab and earn Horse of the Year honors.
Winning the Kentucky Derby, second in the Preakness, winning the Breeders' Cup Classic, and unfortunately we won't get to see him as a 4-year-old, but what a 3-year-old year he did have. One of those kind of later developing ones that we've talked about a little bit. The Eclipse Awards, always fun. It'll be a unique Eclipse Awards show this year with everything being virtual, but it is special to still get a chance to see all the connections honored for some of the incredible equine athletes we've seen on display this year.
Absolutely perfectly said. We also want to welcome back a member of the family into the fold this afternoon with a Friday card, the opening of the 2021 winter season out at Golden Gate Fields. Obviously, some health issues out there with COVID, a later start than normal, but welcome back to Golden Gate Fields, and just a great crew out there. Really enjoyed a couple of years ago when I went out for the Gold Rush with Dave Duggan and Matt Dinneman and the whole crew. So happy and thrilled for them. And look, they get the spotlight, Acacia. I mean, right on them, because they're the cash-out leg in today's Stronach 5.
They are. All 3 tracks, the band's all back together. Laurel, Gulfstream, Santa Anita, and Gulfstream Park, or excuse me, I should say all 4 tracks back involved. So we're thrilled to have them back. That low 12% takeout, it starts just a little bit before 4 p.m.
And we don't have to wait that long to hear Pete Aiello, who's chomping at the bit, I would imagine, upstairs in the booth. He's got your Friday scratches and changes from Fast and Good, Gulfstream Park.